The divisions in the lead up to the ANC elective conference in Nasrec are refusing to die. Now, with the 2019 general election nearly a year away, the governing party is battling internal battles that are even playing out in the national courts. Can we assume that internal democracy within the ANC is well and truly dead, or is the governing party simply imploding? These are some of the questions we'll be attempting to answer tonight. I'm Thulasizwe Semelane, standing in for Vuyo Mvoko, and this is our nightly look at South Africa under the Ramaphosa administration. This is As It Happens. My guests on As It Happens tonight are eNCA's Xoli Mngambi, who's here in studio with me, and joining us in our Durban studios is Xolani Dube, a political analyst from the Xubera Institute for Research and Development. Thank you so much for coming through, gentlemen. Let me start with you, Xoli. Sketch a picture for us. I mean, you know, we sort of got used to ANC provincial structures in KwaZulu-Natal having difficulties, right? And you would see them in the Eastern Cape, in some regions. We would talk about regions having problems. But just today, we've been talking about the Eastern Cape, we've been talking about the Free State, we're talking about Gauteng regions and the regional conferences that were meant to be held this weekend being called off. What is happening?
The question you've got to ask there, Thulas, is what is the common thread in everything that, in each and every one of the provinces that you have counted? And to me, the common thread there is simply that the ANC in its structures, whether it's preparing for a regional conference or a provincial conference, the common refrain or the common complaint among the ANC delegates attending whatever conference is that there is gatekeeping, that there are ghost delegates who are attending ANC conferences, replacing legitimate members. And we must remember that part of what actually saw the KZN Provincial Executive Committee being disbanded in 2017, last year, was as a result in part of the very issues I'm counting to you: gatekeeping, ghost delegates, just the general running of the ANC structures, preparing those delegates for an important elective conference. So that, for me, spells out and actually puts paid to what you said in your intro, that is internal democracy in the ANC dying, or are we witnessing, in fact, an implosion?
Let's bring in Xolani Dube from our Durban studios. Xolani, which one is it? Is the internal democracy of the ANC dying? Is it failing the party? Or are we looking at an organization that's imploding and all we are seeing really are symptoms of that implosion?
I think, Thulas, the most important question, if I problematize your question, I will ask a very simple question. Is it the ANC that we have been told to be a noble organization, or is it something else? Let me say, I don't think that what we are dealing with here is the ANC that for years we've been told that an ANC conducts its affairs in this particular manner. But it seems as if we are dealing with another form of an ANC, or something that masquerades as an ANC but is not an ANC. And so now, if we are not dealing with the ANC, we have to understand that we are dealing with something else. And so this something else is something that is in a sinkhole, or that is in a whirlpool of confusion that is trying to find itself. Because if you look at the history of the ANC, if you look at the document of the ANC, the policies and everything, and when you go to branches and you hear this news, definitely you will end up and saying, but this is not the ANC, it's something else. And so I would say we are not dealing with the ANC here. We are dealing with something else. And so we need to find out what is it that you are dealing with.
Xolani, it's interesting the way you phrase that, and that we're dealing with something else, and an organization that seems to you to be in some kind of a sinkhole and in a whirlpool of confusion. And I can imagine many in the ANC leadership sitting and watching this and shaking their heads vigorously. And that's partly because you will battle to get any kind of acknowledgement of the depth of the problems we are talking about right now. Of course, the exception being whenever there's a report being tabled at conference. There it's always quite frank. But beyond that, there's always this attempt, even this afternoon by Esma Khashule, it was really an attempt to say, no, the ANC is self-correcting and there's no issue of, the picture being as negative as you media are painting it to be. Is the ANC leadership in denial about the extent and the depth of the problems?
Look, Thulasizwe, let's do a simple exercise. ANC's got a document known as Through the Eye of the Needle. Gather these top officials and make a tick and see if amongst them who can go through that eye of the needle. And if there's someone who can go through that eye of the needle, it means that we do have an ANC. If in numbers, in terms of the tick, no one can manage to go through that eye of the needle, definitely we're dealing with something else here, not the ANC.
Right, Xolani, I will want you to talk a bit more about the characteristics of this crisis in the ANC from the perspective of the KwaZulu-Natal structure in a short while. But let me come back to Xoli. Xoli, today we saw some developments around the so-called Ndebele Appeals Panel, which had to do with the Eastern Cape provincial leadership. There seems to be another story that is that sort of emerges, a story of, here there was this investigation that was commissioned to say what happened in that conference that ended up with the delegates throwing chairs at each other and it being dubbed the Festival of Chairs. It comes back, it reports, and it seems, other than noting it during one of the recent National Executive Committee meetings, the current leadership of the ANC simply did nothing, and now people want it to be implemented.
It's interesting, Thulas, the element that you were talking about earlier, that, when the ANC presents either to conference or even indeed at press conferences what the problems in the ANC are, it's very good at diagnosing those problems. But interestingly here, I was talking to a very senior leader who was saying that actually the report you're talking about, that you're referring to, which is in front of me here, the Ndebele report, that report, this person tells me, and I've got to obviously put out a disclaimer to say that this was a private conversation and I'm not at liberty to disclose, therefore, who I was speaking to. So they were saying to me that this particular report was actually rejected at the ANC NEC meeting in March, and the ANC therefore spelt out that the report is incoherent, and that is why they will therefore discard it and opt for a political solution. The argument on the other side, Thulas, is that the reason that the people in the Eastern Cape are pushing for the implementation of the recommendations of this particular report is simply this, that this was an internal ANC remedy process that was instituted by the ANC itself in order to do what? To dissuade ANC members from going to court because they must exhaust internal matters. Here's a report that has now been produced internally, and its recommendations are that do this, suspend that PEC and ensure that an interim one is put in place in order to prepare for a proper legitimate conference.
So those internal remedies now, it seems, it actually now seems these members feel that they have to go to the courts to enforce the internal remedies. So almost get out of the internal remedies to reinforce the internal remedies.
And this is where the confusion comes in. This is where the contradiction, I suppose, comes in. And we are hearing in court that the ANC leadership, in particular the person that is being referred to in court papers is Jesse Duarte, who's saying that if the ANC does decide to go with the recommendations of the Ndebele report, they will in essence be in violation of the court order or the court ruling that came out of the Grahamstown judgment that was in December of last year, which essentially dismissed the applicants who were disgruntled out of the Eastern Cape Conference.
Xolani, let me bring you back in here. What happened in KwaZulu-Natal? Because at one stage, the ANC was reporting to us that the work of the team led by Mike Mabuyakulu and Sihle Zikalala was progressing very well. And I remember when the declaration was made that we've checked on everything, KwaZulu-Natal is ready to have its conferences get underway in terms of the regional conferences and actually ready for the provincial conference. What then happened?
Look, as I've said earlier on, we are dealing with a different chameleon here. And each and every dispute that the members of the ANC encounter, they hand over their trust and their hope to the courts of South Africa. It means that the ANC has failed to sort out its own internal issues. There is so much mistrust. Why there is so much mistrust? Because ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, just like any other province, is a passage to an easily livelihood, a livelihood that you ascend to it without any merit, except that you have to move around and lobby people and so forth. And so when you see that the numbers are against you, the remedy that you have is to rush into court and to, in a number of cases, and start to point some flaws that have been overlooked towards the conference or towards a particular elective conference. And so in this case, that's what happened, because if you understand that the PTT in KwaZulu-Natal was the formation of the so-called the Cyril Ramaphosa bloc and the so-called Jacob Zuma bloc. And both those who were part of the PT team, they agreed that everything was in order. And then that's why your Mike Mabuyakulu, your Cyril Xaba, and your Ntlaga, and your Sihle Zikalala, they were at the University of Zululand, ready for the proceedings of the conference. But as I've said, there was a disgruntled few who went into Pietermaritzburg to interdict the conference. And so, as I'm saying, it also begs a lot of question on the integrity of Mike Mabuyakulu, Sihle Zikalala, of Mike Mabuyakulu, Cyril Xaba, and Nhlagani Pontombela, who were representing the same group who went to Pietermaritzburg and interdicted the conference. And so now the question is the ANC really stagnated, or is it mission is about conferences, or is it about solving the issues that affects the society as a governing party in our province?
All right, Xolani Dube, let's pause for a moment and take a quick break, and we'll have more on this topic when As It Happens continues.